Welcome to the Optional Boss Podcast. We are your hosts, Josh and Tyler, and this is episode 52. Tyler, can you believe that they actually forced us to push back the Bossy Awards another episode?
Well, you know, it's wild when there's so many great choices. Sometimes you have to retabulate your votes and your choices and give it some deep contemplation. And like, how do you even present such prestigiosity?
Yes, no, reality. We had a bigger episode planned this year, and we are doing some collaborations for it, and we didn't want to rush those collaborations any further, especially around the Christmas season. So we decided to push it back a bit.
I mean,
and
if Kegels can get Al Pacino, surely we can get someone.
And Harrison Ford.
And Harrison Ford.
He didn't know where he was.
To circle back to our last episode for people who are listening, the Game Awards happened. We're not talking about it today.
No, today we are doing something that I'm a little surprised that we haven't actually done yet. And that is a tier list of, out of all things, like it's no surprise to anyone. I don't think if you've been listening to us or even heard an episode, we are Nintendo fans, but that does not mean that we can't be critical. And that's how it should be. Is you should be able to be critical on things that you enjoy. And so we're going to do a tier list of consoles from Nintendo.
It is the first time anyone has ever come up with this idea, and it will be the most definitive of tier lists.
Oh, yes. No one's ever done this before. That's why we found a template for it.
No, premium original content, folks. I'm excited. You know, it's just fun to look at these consoles and also see how they feel in a semi-vague, definitive manner.
Yeah, and I'm we're gonna have different opinions, I'm sure. And you know what? I'm sure we'll probably have some controversial opinions, but with each other as well, not just online. And I'm kind of expecting a bit of debate and see if we can't persuade each other into moving something into a different category.
It'll be some riveting discussion. But before that, Josh, what have you been up to in the last little? You know, we're talking to people from the past right now.
Yes, it is not 2025 yet, but this episode is going to be released January 1st. So by the time you're listening to it, hello from the past. So I honestly haven't had a whole lot of time to play anything. I started up The Witcher 3 again because a friend of mine was talking about it and he's getting into it, and it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of making me itch to play it. So I'm playing the PS5 version, and it's not a bad time. And I also actually I bought Metal Hellslinger.
Ooh.
And I started playing that, and I came to a realization that while I can enjoy the idea, and I think it's executed very well, it's not my game. So I end up refunding it.
It's tricky.
It
like a rhythm first-person shooter sounds so cool, but also sounds like something that, like, if you can't get into it, you will not like it. And
I think it was more like I saw what it was doing and I can enjoy that, but it's just more of the same all the way through.
Ah, okay. So it wasn't...
And a lot of it was like, okay, here's the arena that you're stuck in, kill all the enemies, continue. Here's the arena you're stuck in, or a room you're stuck in with a bunch of enemies, continue.
So basically it's like, you know, it has a really good idea, and it's not that it's not a fun concept, but, and I mean, I know it's kind of hard to compare it to, but you're not going to have the same kind of like inventive level structure as something like the new Doom games or something like that, because it's very much trying to emulate the new Doom games with its own style, right?
In a sense, yes.
Yeah, so I could see that.
I can appreciate it. It was fun, but maybe I gave up on it too early, but at the same time, it was just, I got bored of it quick.
See, that's unfortunate because I've had songs from it in my rotation when I just listen to random video game music on the old Spotify there. And
the music's great.
Well, and I don't listen to it because I'm thinking to myself, I might play this game and I would enjoy it much more thoroughly if I, paired it with the thing it was made for.
Yes.
When will I? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it was on sale for like $14 Canadian, so I ended up refunding it that. I did, however, pick up a roguelike game, which
Ooh.
is pretty rare for me nowadays, since Hades has destroyed roguelikes for me. Uh, I don't know if this is proper pronunciation, but Noita? Noita? It is done by a... I want to refrain from using the term indie supergroup, but kind of. Three guys who were pretty prolific in the indie scene, such as the guy who did Baba Is You, Crown Deluxe, and the Spacer, I think.
So the
Swapper. No, the Swapper.
the purveyors of some major indie darlings.
Yes.
I would say Baba Is You is like a Cave Story level of indie success. Like, it's not a big team, but it was a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. And I understand the praise that this game is getting, because there's so much stuff just packed in this, and you could go just straight to the end, but it's not about getting to the end. It's about the actual exploration that you're doing, the things that you can do. So the whole gimmick behind the game is like every pixel, it is pixel art. Every pixel is physically simulated. So just imagine the processing power on this. This might be the only pixel game that will melt a Switch. But you have so many different like combinations that can affect things. Like you can douse yourself in water so you don't get hurt by fire as much, which there's a lot of fire and a lot of explosions. Explosions will spread the fire throughout. So if it's landing on grass, it'll start spreading outwards. You can pour water from a water jar into like a poison swamp and then start throwing projectiles, and it'll cleanse the water so you can actually enter it, so you don't get poisoned. And it kind of works on like a percent system. So if you're doused so much, then it's going to do more damage. So if you're like 100% doused in poison, that's going to be lasting a long time. You can wash yourself off, but it's going to do more damage the higher up it is.
Interesting. I like the concept of something that is environmentally reactive to that extent.
It is very much. And there's the only thing that persists through each playthrough is just your knowledge. You don't get like boons or anything that persists from run to run. It's just your knowledge. So if you were like super ultra He-Man gamer, you could technically beat it on your first run.
Okay, so it doesn't have like any sense of upgradable progression like most roguelikes.
No.
Like there's no you unlocked access to such and such weapon or power. It is just every run is what they will be every time you get nothing.
Yes.
I like that. I like that in a roguelike. It's rare that they're ballsy like that anymore.
Yeah.
And I understand why, because they're very like, the last one I was playing was like Rogue Legacy 2. And, I think I sunk almost 30 hours in that game, and it kind of lives and dies by its gradual progression. But I also, stuff like Stone Soup, you get nothing.
Well, just as an example, like it's a bunch of different biomes. I think I made it to the 4th biome. I don't know how many there are.
Yeah.
I want to say 7, but in the first biome, I realized that there's like this big lake of lava, and it's like, okay, that's the end of the world. And no, it's not, because later on I found out like when there's lava on the ground, you can douse water from a jar, and it's limited to how much you can actually put in or use in a jar. But if you mix it with water and lava, you will get cobblestone. So I started making a bridge as far as I could, and then I had to you get like this floaty fly. It's not jumping, it's floating.
Yeah.
And it uses like a stamina bar. So I got so far and then realized that there's a whole other section over there. And that's always going to be over there. And it's just in the first biome. And it's like, okay, sweet. So I go over there and there's like this damn temple. And these runes, and then this this orb of truth or something. I don't know what it did, because I picked it up and it's like, okay. So that seemed kind of important. I don't know if it's Easter eggy or if that's just how one of the runs end if you collect these things. So I started heading back, and I only got back a little bit, and there was a boss after me. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta run. And this boss, anything I shot at it and hit him with it shot back at me. So it replicated my attacks.
Huh.
I was not, along with having its own. And another gimmick of the game is like you get these wands, and some of them are consumable, some of them you just, and you can replenish them after between each biome. But some of them are just permanent. It's you can always shoot, and you'll find these items throughout the biomes and everything. You can find so many, and you'll also find like spells and stuff. So at each in between biome, you can conjure and you can take some of the spells and rearrange what your wand does. So if I have a wand that shoots and it has 2 slots in it, and I have a wand that just it spawns bombs, what I can do is I can take that shooting mechanic and I can take that bomb mechanic and put it on one wand, and I'll start shooting bombs.
Rocket launcher wand.
Pretty much, just it's cylinder bombs, and when it hits based on impact, it's going to explode. Downfall of that is each explosion causes fire. So you start setting everything on fire and can't stand anywhere.
So you don't want to get
found
too
this one
overpowered.
wand. I found this one wand, and the icon reminded me of the cross in Castlevania. And it said it was electrical. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to shoot out these like crosses from Castlevania out in line. No, the thing was massive, and I zapped myself.
Oh no.
And killed myself pretty quick.
Oh no. I like that.
Probably shouldn't be standing in water, but you know.
Games like that can be frustrating as hell, but games that genuinely reward your intelligence or punish your lack thereof are always very intriguing. Because when you do get those solutions.
I've had wands that can take up to almost 10 different spells. And it's like, oh geez. And some spells are just, increases the projectile speed. Some reflect projectiles from coming at you. But if one does actually have enough force to break through the barrier, then it does double damage. So there's a lot of risk versus reward in this game. But it's very neat. I would highly recommend it. I don't know if it'll ever come to consoles or not, just because of the amount of physics simulation in it. But it's really neat.
It is the kind of thing that I do think I would probably get into from what I've seen.
Oh, you would love it. Absolutely love it. And there is a kick mechanic. It's PC only, so using a keyboard. But I can hit F at a minecart, and there's usually some kind of cart at the beginning that leads into the mines. And you can kick the cart, jump on the cart as it's about to go over the hill, and just ride it down. And then it could do flips and like throw you against a wall and kill you. But you have that choice.
Interesting.
So yeah, no. So been playing that, and again, we are not in January, so I still have a bit of time. Now, when you hear this episode, it will be January. I have started Demon's Crest.
It's about time.
Yes. It's pretty neat. It like Capcom game. It's like they merged Ghosts and Goblins with Mega Man in a sense.
You know what? I think that's actually a very apt comparison, especially if you play the like previous Gargoyle Quest games. Like they are quite Mega Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize this about this because you told me that it was like a Ghosts and Goblins like spin-off or something, or I don't remember the exact term that you used, but so I'm like, okay, so it's just going to be level to level, and then like I finished the first area and end up on this world map, and it's like, what the fuck do I do now?
No, it's kind of like light Metroidvania and very light RPG. The earlier ones were actually a little bit more RPG-ish. I think the second one on Game Boy, because I haven't played the first one, I think that one's NES, or maybe other way around. But instead of like flying over the overworld, you actually have like a top-down map, and it's like the old school Final Fantasies on Game Boy. It's actually hilarious.
That's funny.
And like you go on quests and stuff. Like it is at its core a very level-to-level kind of game. It also, I don't know if it's just like an aesthetic thing, but man, does it ever give me Castlevania 4 vibes.
I think that might be the aesthetic, the art direction, actually. Because I was kind of getting that too. And it's kind of funny because when I got to the third boss, he was like a flame dude. And I didn't actually realize, like, I knew I picked something up, like this stone gargoyle thing, and I didn't realize that you had to activate it because I
Yeah.
saw it, and just because of the way the controls are, I'm like, okay, I'm going to A to select it on the menu, and nothing happens. It's like, okay, so it's just going to be like a passive thing. It's just one of those collectibles, and as the more bosses I kill, the stronger I get, or something. Um, so I'm sitting there attacking this boss, attacking this flame lord, and your base attack is a flame like fireball. It's
Yeah.
like this guy is not dying. He is just not dying. And eventually, I went back to the menu and just hit all kinds of buttons and found out that it's a Y button to select it, which kind of makes sense because that is the fire button. But and it's like, oh, okay. So that threw me off briefly.
Yeah, but now
Mainly
you know
because the
you can
boss
turn
didn't
into
die.
different stuff.
Yes, which is cool. I was sad because I really could have used that hover or float ability as the default during
Yeah.
that fight, but at the same time, then where's the challenge if you're taking away the nice easy stuff?
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, you have just that one transformation right now.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, like you lose the whole like glide jump, but I
Yep.
think you can walk on spikes now.
Oh.
I think so. There's like they all have like, a benefit and a trade off.
Yeah.
And of course like a different attack and stuff like that. So
Well, it's kind of funny because I thought the only attack, like, it hits the ground and kind of runs across the ground for the attack, like shoots things up out of the ground.
yeah.
It's like, okay. And then this boss turns into like a floating head. And it's like, well, how the hell am I supposed to? Oh, it goes straight if you just jump and then shoot.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, the ground ability you have like a tackle kind of attack as well.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I don't know. It has been a while since I played it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not going to say it's like, the most mind-blowing game, but it's just a good Super Nintendo game.
It seems that way, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what enough about me. What about you?
I won't go into huge details because I'm sure we will actually get a full-on discussion of it, as we'll probably cover what we played. But I did complete Earthbound before the end of the year, and I have thoughts, as most people would, but without going into it, I'm just gonna say I'm glad I finally beat it.
I was gonna say, because I based on the game and just the kind of games that you generally play when it comes to RPGs and turn-based and whatnot,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it's probably not your favorite, but at the same time, you had enough fun and can respect it.
It's one of those things because I have picked it up numerous times, and
Yes.
it's nice to finally see it through. Like I knew if I, had pushed past a fair bit beyond what I had played, I would start to kind of see it more for what it was, and I did, and it did improve my perception of it. But I'm not gonna say it's a full turnaround like I had with like Secret of Mana, where I ended up
Right.
really liking it once it was over with. Like I can still point out its flaws. It's got a bunch, but I like it more than I initially did, and I think that's a good thing. It's
Well, I mean, before you didn't even make it to Tucson, did you?
no, I would get the first melody and then I would be done. And for people who
Yeah.
haven't played it, it's like that's like the first real boss fight.
Yeah.
So
So all things considered, like, and I'm saying this as a Mother and Earthbound fan. The game doesn't really pick up till I'm gonna say you get at least Jeff,
more or less, yeah.
because
Or
that's it's still like in the early introduction phase, right? So
it's one of those things that it feels a lot longer than it probably is. Like I'm sure if I were to replay it, I would be at that point in the game what would feel like no time, but it just felt longer because I'd never done it. Now that said, for my like quick thoughts and impressions for people who might be curious, like it is probably one of the most digestible RPGs. Like
yeah.
I'm not going to say it's like stupid easy, but it's pretty streamlined. You don't really have to grind. Um,
Oh
and
God, no.
it's got good pacing. So it's a little aimless, but I think that's just more so something of its time. And also with its aimlessness, I mean, there's a guy you can buy hints from. So the game will never not let you know what you have to do.
Yeah. The
So
the only time, and I'm pretty sure I said this to you, the only time I would suggest like actually using a guide would be for the monkey trading sequence.
that
Because
is
it's ugh.
it's unnecessarily unnecessary. But yeah,
Yeah.
overall, it was more enjoyable than I once thought. But
If you look at it from a story perspective through the eyes of like an 8-year-old kid going on an adventure with friends, then everything kind of makes sense.
yeah, it works in that context for sure. Um,
Absolutely.
but
And
beyond,
we've talked about like Mother 3 and Mother
much better game,
1.
much hands down.
Mother 1 is for those who are fans of the Mother series. Earthbound is good. It generally is a good time. Mother 3 is where it's at. Now, if you do want to check the series out, I would highly suggest starting with Earthbound and then going to Mother 3.
You'll get more out of it.
Yes, you will get more out of Mother 3, even though it's
Yeah.
not a continuation technically.
No, but it's just it all works together.
We're going to have to do an episode on Mother 3.
One day. But beyond that, and I'll just keep this short and sweet because this ramble's gone on for quite some time.
Yes.
I don't believe I mentioned in the last episode, but I have added something to my console repertoire, and that is I believe it's called the Evercade Alpha. And it's just a, bar top size arcade. I think it's like, like an 8-inch screen. So it's not obnoxiously large, but it is big enough that it actually feels good to play.
It's only
And
an 8-inch screen?
I believe so.
Wow, that's actually really small. Like, that's almost Switch size.
It is, but also you're sitting right in front of it. So it's surprising, actually. It's kind of like how its form factor is set up feels pretty good. But
mind you, at the same time, I'm going to burn out my retinas because my main monitor is a 42-inch.
Oh no, we have gone
TV.
past to the don't stare at screen space. That's life now.
I have VR. They attach to my eyes.
Yeah, I had to get this thing because it is essentially it's a Mega Man arcade machine.
Right.
I have to do it. So it came with 6 built-in arcade games, and there was the 2 Mega Man arcade games, and then I think there was Final Fight, Strider, Knights of the Round, and another just random Capcom arcade shooter that I can't think of the name of. But all I gotta say is, like, I haven't really played a lot of arcade games in my time, and when you actually play an arcade game with arcade controls, man, does it ever make all the difference in appreciating them. I don't know what it is, like, side-scrolling shoot-em-ups are just kind of okay in my mind, but, like, just slapping the shit out of that A button to fire a bunch is so oddly satisfying.
I'm gonna say it's probably maybe not, but it's probably on the same point that if you look at the N64 online and you don't have the N64 controller, it's fine, it's doable, but once you actually get the controller it was made for,
oh, you get it.
Everything feels so much better, and
Yeah.
it's a hard sell until you actually feel the difference.
It is, but even beyond the few arcade games on it, the reason why I say add it to my console repertoire is because it takes cartridges, which is so cool.
That's cool.
And so
who made it?
The company's called Evercade. So I'm not in. I think it's like Blaze Entertainment or something. I'm not sure, but they have their own line of cartridges with a bunch of officially licensed games, and they're the most random compilations. And I love this stuff. You just give me just a handful of stuff. It doesn't even have to all be good. I'm still going to be intrigued. So I recently got for the holidays, I got 3 cartridges for it. I got the Sunsoft Collection 1 and 2. I'm not going to go over everything they have, but the second one has Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, so that's all that matters. And then the other one, I think it was like the Pico Collection 3, and I don't really know them by Pico, but they seem to have a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know if you've heard of, like, I think it was like an old canceled N64 game called 40 Winks.
Okay. Did that not come out?
I don't know if it did or not. I do remember it was one of those like really heavily marketed games and then it just disappeared. But either way, it's got that on there. And yeah, just a whole bunch of stuff. So you'll have stuff that ranges from like there's Game Boy games on these cartridges to like N64 to Random Arcade or like Amiga games. Like it's the weirdest compilations. But God, is it ever cool. And especially just playing these games with arcade controls is just a whole different ball game. So I like it because it's a little bit more than just a gimmick. It actually is fun to use.
Okay, so I had to look up 40 Winks because I know I've seen it.
Yeah.
So it was made for the PlayStation, and a version was developed for N64. They even had reviews in Nintendo Power, but it was canceled before it released.
So that's what it was.
So
it did
there
come out
was-
just not on 64. Okay.
Yes, there was a version for N64, I guess, that came out in April 15th, 2019. But yeah.
That's cool. So yeah, I can finally see what that's about. No idea if it's good, but apparently it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I've heard that name. But
So
yeah, neat.
But yeah, I think geez, we've been at this almost half an hour. We should really get to this whole tier list mess, huh?
Whole tier list? Yeah, let's
throw on some
put
tunes
that
and get at it.
idea in S.
Yeah, fuck.
We'll be right back after this. So again, we are Nintendo fans. It's kind of funny when you think about it, because I know, like, off the air, me and Tyler both kind of stated this, like, the Zelda games and the Nintendo IPs, the Super Mario Brothers, they're fine. I don't have Super Mario Wonder, which came out like it's been out for a little bit, right?
I think it came out,
But
been up for about a year now.
We're Nintendo fans, but at the same time, like, those big hit IPs, we're very, oh, cool, it happened. Right?
I'll get it if it's on sale, maybe.
Yeah, we don't get overly excited.
We're very passive towards Nintendo's big releases for the most
Yeah.
part. We like them, but like, we don't need them right now.
I think it's very much the architecture and what they kind of do with their systems that kind of makes them. It's definitely the third party that kind of carries them for ourselves, anyways. Which is kind of funny because, like, Mario was the top thing back in the day, right? Like, for the NES.
Well, it's still the same though.
It is. Well,
that's the dilemma.
I'd almost argue like Zelda is the seller more than Mario now.
I think Zelda is much more of the blockbuster, as where, well, Mario's kind of transferable, right? You know, for your one Zelda game, you'll have 5 games with Mario in that same span of time.
Yeah.
So
starting this tier list, we're actually going to work from latest to earliest.
all right. Well, before we get started, for those who might somehow not know how tier lists work, basically you can't see it, but follow at home, folks.
We'll probably toss it up on social media. Probably
it would
Blue
make
Sky
sense.
and Instagram, probably. We'll
yeah,
put both versions because I don't think we're going to be exactly on point with each other's forethoughts.
There's 5 categories. It's pretty straightforward. S is your best, and D is your worst, and A, B, C are your range from top to bottom. So,
Yep.
that's it, folks.
I think that's pretty fair. A couple of things to make note of. We do have Game Boy and Game Boy Color separated. We also
we should.
Yes. We also have the DS, the DSi, and 3DS separated.
Yeah.
And when we go into discussion of each kind of console, I'm going to give a little bit of information. So we're starting off with the Switch. It's the latest console. And so obviously Switch kind of made headlines. It came out swinging, especially after, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So it came out 2017. And at this moment, at least based on the notes that I have, 146 million sold.
Jesus.
Now, this does include the Switch OLED, Switch Lite. So,
yeah, but That's all the same thing. They're
Yeah,
different, but it's all
it
the
is.
same. You know,
It's not like the Game Boy and Game Boy Color where certain things only work on certain things.
no, and I mean, if you're just gauging the overall quality, like I don't even need any build up for this. I think it's safe for me to say like the Switch is an S tier, and there's so many reasons as to why. Now, I have lots to complain about, but
The eStore is trash.
the
But
eStore is
at the same
absolute
time,
trash.
I barely ever go into the eStore or any of
Uh,
the online functions when it comes to like their what do you even call that? Like the Nintendo page and shit like
uh
that.
I think it's just it's like a My Nintendo tab or something. And so
Yeah.
I'll peruse the eShop from time to time, just like in the new releases, so I can kind of get in mind, like if that gets a physical, I'll keep an eye out for it. But the eShop's an absolute dumpster fire. That is a fact.
So
And
the Switch was the it's this might be a weird argument for myself because I have lots of like actual physical games for other consoles, but Switch is the first time I've actually gone out of my way to start physically collecting.
gets out of hand, doesn't
And
it?
it really does. Jesus.
Yep.
So I have a bit of bias in that sense. The fact that it's cartridges, I love cartridges, even if they're just tiny. It doesn't have like the weight of a NES or Super Nintendo cartridge, but it's still a cartridge nonetheless. It's easier to manage, and just the fact that the library is all over the place, and it it is an indie gem of a console, and
See,
that is something that I can't help but adore.
if we're gonna look at it piece by piece, for the library itself is one of the things that makes this a S tier console, because not only do you have damn near whatever you would want from the indie scene, at least your much more prolific titles and stuff that's just must play, but it's also the most mind-blowing legacy console ever. Like, I can play some of my favorite games from the NES to the Switch. It's incredible.
I'm
And that's not
doing
even
Demon's Crest with the super, like I went out of my way and I got all the classic console controllers.
well, and
I'm playing Demon's Crest, a Super Nintendo game, with a Super Nintendo controller. That's wireless.
well,
That's
and that's
mind
another
blowing.
point as well, because if there was something that like would make me a little contentious about this console, is I hate the Joy Cons. They're just terrible.
The Joy Cons
Like,
are awful, and
but
but
yeah, it, I have been playing a lot in handheld, and like I'll admit they're plenty passable for like if I'm just chilling with it and I'm playing like a turn-based RPG or something. Like no harm, no foul. If I want to do like precise platforming, no.
no.
But I don't have to use the Joy Cons, and even better, like I can use the Super Nintendo controller. I can use an N64 controller. You could even get a GameCube controller working on this. I think the only generation of controller they haven't replicated is like the Wii, which the Joy Cons pretty much do that anyway. So
Yeah.
you can do whatever suits your needs.
Joy Cons are trash. They did not handle the Joy-Con drift situation the best.
No,
So it does have some faults there, but at the same time, like when I'm not using those dinky little Joy-Cons. Like I've used them, but I barely have mine in handheld mode. And I have
you're
the all different kinds of controllers. I got the Pro controller, I got the Super Nintendo, the NES, and the N64, and the Sega one. So
that's just it. The amount of options that there are, it's not even something that is needed to be a point of contention. And admittedly, like on the Switch Lite, they are pretty comfortable. I mean, you can't remove them, but just having that D-pad alone and like that smaller form factor, it is very comfortable, and it's just better than standard Joy-Cons, I'd say.
yeah,
So, not enough to bring this down. And like I could go on about the fact that like the handheld aspect, that's already just mind blowing.
for
I think the
some of the
only
games that they
thing,
got out there, like Witcher 3's on it, and yeah, sure, it's low quality and whatnot, but guess what?
Witcher
It's also
3's on
handheld.
there. Yeah.
Doom Eternal.
Yeah. You're getting
Yeah, sure.
crazy.
There's a
Like,
Steam Deck and whatnot, but this has cartridges.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because I'm just Nintendo purist, but like Steam Deck just seems wrong to me to play the games that I'm going to play on my Switch.
I think if I was still heavy into just PC, it would make absolute sense for me. But
For sure. But I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's mine is S for Switch. Just makes
S for
sense.
Switch.
Yeah.
Next up, we got the Wii U, which came
Okay.
out in 2012 and sold 13.5 million units. Quite a stark contrast to the Switch.
So I don't have. You actually own a Wii U.
Yes, I do.
So I don't. I've spent a little bit of time with it. So I'll let you kind of lead this one, but I do have some thoughts on it.
Um, I'm trying not to bring up my dark humor side.
All right. All right.
So honestly, yeah, I have a Wii U and I've barely touched it. It has an inch of dust on it. I got mine specifically just for modding, and even with that kind of library opened up, I still don't really touch it. And that might be because I do like the physical collections. I do not have a single physical game for it.
See, I think emulation just kind of takes the. As much as I like emulating stuff, and I will still emulate stuff on the DS or something, things that are a little bit more difficult to attain. It's something, it's like that Netflix effect where you have so many options, you don't want any of them.
Yes.
And I'm just a lot less inclined. So it's really cool that the Wii U is such like a modding powerhouse. But I also understand like almost the fatigue that comes with wanting to play a ROM when I got all these other games. We'll play those. But
Yeah. I mean,
I feel
the biggest issue, like even with Switch Online, like a lot of those games that are on there that I'm going to be picking up and playing, aside from Sega, chances are, even if it's in my library, like on my shelf, and I got a fair amount of like Super Nintendo and NES games, I'm still more inclined to play it on the Switch than in the console, just easy use, right? So,
the Switch is going to be the preferred choice at any time, and I think that's another thing. Like the Wii U definitely suffers from being like very much a Switch prototype, but I will say it it doesn't not deserve its reputation, but it's not a bad console by any means.
oh,
It
it's
has
fine, but
it has a lot of problems, like the whole the fact that you can take it off the TV and play it in handheld is cool, but you've got the radius restrictions. The fact that like a lot of games will restrict you to using the gamepad without giving you the option of like just a standard controller if you're just playing a single player game on the TV. Like it does a lot of dumb shit.
yeah.
But it's neat. It is like, okay, so my only real experience with the Wii U for a lengthy amount of time was when I played Wind Waker, the HD remaster. And it was good. Like, I didn't love it, but it's just because I didn't fall in love with the game. But playing the game was really enjoyable. And it's gimmicky, but the fact that I never had to like open up my map or my inventory, it was just down there. It was nice. It felt good. It didn't feel clunky to use the big tablet controller.
Yeah.
But I think I'm a little biased also because I love how it had so much potential to be like a TV DS, but just wasn't.
Yeah, it's
Which is a shame because it had DS on its virtual console too.
yeah,
But
but that's all shut down.
well, yes.
So, for modding capabilities, sweet. I was really excited to get one. I was really excited to get into some of the games that I never got a chance to play, and I just never did. And honestly, I'm also the stupid name.
Yeah,
The name was
the name is a
dumb.
point of contention. That is for
The
sure.
the name I was part of the not the problem, but I was part of the majority of people who were like, oh, it's just a Wii upgrade, Wii upgrade, right? So um and the only thing that they really showed was the gamepad. They didn't show off the console in the advertisements and everything. So it's just like, oh, so that you just attach this to the Wii and whatever. I don't see a purpose
Nope.
for it. Then it's its own console. Um, it does have some value, but after owning one and knowing that a lot of them are dying right now because of an EEPROM problem, and there are ways to fix it, I'm gonna put this in D tier.
D.
Yep.
See, I was at least going to give it the benefit of the doubt and give it a C because, I don't think it's the most atrocious thing ever, but I can't defend it any more than I already have, which was not very much.
Yeah, it's going C for you.
I gotta put it in C. I feel bad for the little guy. You know, it's not like it was anything like outright problematic. It didn't like cause your hands to bleed. You know, we'll get to that in a bit. But you know, it was just it. The Wii U is the Sega Saturn of Nintendo, if anything. You know, it just feels incomplete, and it couldn't live up to its potential.
I'm going to put it in D for Death of Star Fox.
Wait, well, he did come back, but it wasn't even his game, so that doesn't count. But I guess these are more or less in chronological order, aren't they? No, kind of not, but we'll figure it out. But I do think it's safe to say that the 3DS is our next one up.
Yeah, okay. We can do that. So 3DS. So now the notes that I have the 3DS, the 2DS, which we're going to lump as one, but then the original DS, and the DSi, DS Lite, and all that kind of stuff lumped in as one. So the only data I have for that is 2011 and 75.9 million sold.
The 3DS.
Actually, no, they do have the DS separate. Okay, never mind. So just 3DS was 75.9 million.
The 3DS sold a lot, but I think, you know, this point has been made before that the 3DS sold a lot to people who had a 3DS. I know I'm not exactly the norm, but geez, I have like 6, something like that.
As someone who used to collect them to repair them, I have a stupid amount just in boxes now.
There was a point in time, like the 3DS hilariously now, like especially the early models, because they're really good for modding. They used to be so dirt cheap. You could just find somewhere you walk in, it's like $30 for a DS. I'm like, sure, why not? Yeah. I'll grab another one.
Well, when they discontinued them, I went into Walmart and got a 2DS XL, not the wedge, but the folding model, for $99.
That is something I'm kicking myself for, because I did never get a 2DS XL or I think a new XL either. I don't think I have any of the XL 3DSs, to be honest.
This is a new 2DS XL.
Yeah. That I have. But they just came out with so goddamn many. And it's not a Game Boy and Game Boy Color situation, but the 3DS versus the new 3DS thing is so dumb, because there's so little that will operate only on the 3DS or the new 3DS, but at the same time, there are a lot of games that, yeah, they'll run on the original DS, but you're not going to want to. It won't work well.
Yeah.
And then also the fact it's like, yeah, you can't get Super Nintendo Virtual Console games on without the new 3DS. And like, why? It's plenty capable.
Yeah.
So they did some dumb stuff, but it's weird how I didn't really think I was all that nostalgic for the 3DS, but maybe it's because we're getting further away from it. 3DS was incredible. Like, jeez, I sunk so much time into that thing.
So, I'll be honest, I got mine originally to do modding. Some of my games that I have that I can't take portable were now becoming portable. There is some PlayStation 1 that you can get working fine enough on it on the new 2DS XL. Anyways, I think I had Legends of Mana on my 3DS. But
so good.
That was just kind of like the comfort food to play Super Nintendo and NES and very limited PlayStation games just on my couch as my wife watched TV.
It's comfortable.
It exactly. And I mean, there's Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance games and whatnot. Like, that's how I played Mother 3 originally.
It's and even its own, like, I know you didn't have a lot of experience with its like standalone library, but it had some pretty awesome, like, I would say even though people don't really look at it the same way because we've advanced as much as we can. But I would say the DS to the 3DS is like as big of a jump as like the Super Nintendo to the N64. And I know there was some N64 games on the original DS. Shut up. But the incredible leap that the DS is to the 3DS, the fact that one of the first year games or first or second year was Smash Bros. Like that's unheard of, and it was like really good too. The graphics on the 3DS are stupid impressive.
They are.
Now, and some of the games are massive.
I will also mention this for myself. If it wasn't for the modding capabilities, I wouldn't care about the system, because I've looked at the library and I've tried a couple things and borrowed a few games and that I thought I'd actually really enjoy, and I don't know, something about handheld. Like, again, my Switch doesn't leave its dock like ever.
Well, and see, here's another thing that I can say about the 3DS that kind of works to its detriment. It's very much one of those consoles where, like, you kind of had to be there.
Yes, and that's another thing. Any of these handhelds, I do not have the nostalgia for.
Because here's the thing, admittedly, like, I don't boot it up just to boot it up like I would used to, right?
Right.
I more likely boot up like an original DS game over a 3DS game. I think of the library very fondly, and it got me into a lot of things. Like, that's where I got into the Shin Megami Tensei, more or less. Monster Hunter. I sunk a lot of time into Monster Hunter.
Yep.
The 3D generation of Pokemon, when those started coming out, like I completed the Pokedex, for fuck's sakes. So, I can look back on it very fondly, but it is probably one of the hardest generations of games to recommend people to play, because it almost feels like a chore to play these games now. They're big in a less convenient way to play than most things, but feels on par with most things, if that makes sense. Like, they're console quality games, but you can't play them on a console, and that's almost frustrating.
Yeah.
So
there is a game that I just thought of that did sell quite well on the 3DS, actually. I'm pretty sure. Shovel Knight, the Treasure Trove.
I have it. I don't need it. I just bought it.
I got it on other things, but I wanted to give it some praise for its actual library. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I just don't care about the library.
But yeah, something like there's Samus Returns. I would love to play it. I don't think I ever really will. Stuff like that. It's gonna be rare that I go out of my way for a new 3DS experience. Right now, anyway. Who knows? Give it a couple more years. I might get stupid nostalgic for it even more. But I'm gonna say, overall, it's like I can go on about how I love it, but it's B. And it's B because it's hard to go back to.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only thing that's holding it back in my mind.
I'm at a toss-up between B and C, and I'll give it the benefit of the doubt for B, just because it is kind of my road trip type thing. Like, my Switch is great, but at the same time, it's a bit bigger if I just want something nice, small, and then I can also dive into nostalgia. So that's kind of nice. So B tier for me.
Okay, I'm just gonna quickly snap the neck on this next one, like Nintendo did. DSi, which is our next one, it's going in D. It's going in D because if we're gonna count it as its own thing, we are removing it from the DS library, and that's all it fucking has. Otherwise, it just made shit worse.
Yeah.
It's a good console. Like, it is comfortable and it functions very well. I think I have a DSi XL, and if I'm going back to some of my old turn-based DS games, I will probably use it because it is nice. But I hate it, and I hate it because you took away the Game Boy Advance slot. It's the dumbest thing you could possibly do.
Yeah.
I'll give it credit for its time. It was kind of ahead of its time. It had a camera and it had internet connection, right? But so did the iPhone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it was like,
so did the iPod
cool.
Touch.
Yeah, like, that's cool that you guys are doing it. Good on you, Nintendo. But everyone already has a DS, and they're not buying a new one because it's got a camera. DSiWare was interesting, but it's kind of hard because it was basically like the Xbox Live Arcade or Nintendo, like the Wii Shop of its time, right? For the
Yeah.
DS. But it didn't have really anything to bring you there.
It wanted to be the arcade store, but it couldn't.
No, and even Nintendo like really didn't have a lot of confidence. They weren't really letting indie titles, but the ones that they were letting were like a couple trickle. I do think it did get some good stuff. Like there's a Shantae game on the original 3D or DSi shop, but like just it's too little, too late.
Yeah.
That's a D.
Speaking of, because I'm gonna do D as well, and I'm gonna D.
It's there.
I'm gonna go D with this next one. Actually,
no,
and that's just the DS.
The regular DS.
So, stat-wise, the DS came out 2004. This has mixed in DSi, DS Lite numbers. 154 million units sold.
Juggernaut.
Yeah. So I would have downgraded the 3DS as well to D tier if it wasn't for its modding capabilities. This is where I'm going to put myself in shit. I don't care about the DS. Like, I've looked at its library and it's just like, I don't care. And yes,
I feel for you.
It has that Game Boy Advance slot, but I just rather the form factor of the original Game Boy Advance.
So this is actually really funny that because if you rank it in D tier, for me it's an S. Like the original DS, most specifically the DS Lite, is straight up an S tier for me. But it's so funny how I know exactly why this is the way it is, because as we have mentioned previously, if you'll find folks go back to episode 10, you around this particular time were probably primarily a console and PC FPS player, if I'm not mistaken.
Just PC.
Yeah. That was pretty much your whole deal, right?
Yeah.
As where this was gaming for me. This was pretty much like my main thing that I was doing. And this is definitely where my Switch physical collecting habits come from. I had such a library of DS games because the library is so good, but I can completely understand how you can't look at it and find it, because this is where I will praise the DS to all ends. It is one of the most experimental times in gaming, and you can find some of the most original and cool shit. Like just a random one to toss up. You know that one that Capcom re-released recently? Was it Ghost Trick? Phantom Detective.
Okay.
You were getting random IPs like that. You had stuff like Elite Beat Agents. There's Lunar Knights, which is like the Boktai games. Like, I am just naming stuff out of left field, but that's because developers were just putting shit out. And it was so good. But beyond that, the DS is what kept like Super Nintendo style pixel games alive throughout that whole generation.
So, and eventually I'll get back to it. The one game that I probably spent the most time with for DS is probably Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow.
Well, and that's actually what I was just about to bring up too, is it had all sorts of things like, you know, we'll probably be getting them early next year, but the Castlevania Dominus collection is just the 3 DS ones, and they're all top notch. Games that I'm more than happy to go back to.
I'm going to give them another shot. I haven't played 2 of them. The one I did get a good chunk through.
That was Order of Ecclesia, right?
Sorry? Oh no, I did do Order of Ecclesia, actually.
Yeah. Order of Ecclesia is nuts.
Yes, it was pretty good. Once I realized that I could dual equip.
That helps. That helps a lot.
But just the one thing that pissed me off, it has forever soured my taste for DS, I think, is how much you had to use the stylus.
See, and it's funny because that would be the thing that would take this down to an A for me. The thing that pushes it back up to S is the Game Boy Advance slot. That's just the icing on the cake there. But I am not blind to the fact that, especially early DS games, they just had to touch screen somewhere. And in, Dawn of Sorrow, it is the most frustrating shit because it's like, you just finished a high octane boss battle, and then right before you can finish it, it's just like, here, quickly draw this.
It was like a drawing QuickTime event.
Yeah, and you gotta pull out the stylus, and then you gotta do it, and the time window's very strict.
Yeah, it's a QuickTime event.
And if you fail, you have to keep fighting the boss because they regen health. It's dumb as fuck.
So I'm ignoring the fact that it has a Game Boy Advance slot on it. I think it's a great addition. Absolutely. Yeah. And I will not discredit that, but I'm not going to base my ranking on that. And I'm going to base it more when it came out. Like, I think I'd put the DSi actually higher.
Weird.
Just because at that time, not a lot of people were saying, "Oh, gotta use touchscreen for everything." It was more normal. Where when DS came out, like the first DS game I had was 007 GoldenEye. And you had to aim with the stylus.
Oh, see, that's
frustrating. That was trash. That was garbage.
Yeah.
Drawing QuickTime events in Castlevania, that was stupid. And it's just, those are my two biggest experiences with the DS, and it's just left that sour taste in my mouth.
And here's the thing I find, if you want to find like the real gems with the DS, you have to find the ones that are either all or no touch controls. There are some times where they can both be incorporated. Like, The World Ends With You is probably one of the greatest, like, most creative games ever made because it uses both at the same time in a way that no one else even figured out.
Right.
But you give that to someone who's not willing to find out, they're not going to have fun. But stuff like I will praise Elite Beat Agents as like one of the best rhythm games ever, and that is like a strictly touchscreen game. WarioWare Touched, it's just a collection of micro games, but there's still a lot of fun. That I can see as
being fun, but then I'm also chalking up like I don't see myself having a serious experience with it.
Yeah. Nope, I can definitely see, and like you said, the whole just, games that were made strictly for handheld have never really been your jam.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're still sticking with D tier?
I'm still sticking with D tier.
All right.
I'll probably get some hate for that, but
this is going to be a weird one.
Which one? The
GameCube.
I was going to say Wii.
Oh, we are at the Wii.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not going to say good for what's ranking if I completely forgot one of the best selling consoles ever. I feel
for Nintendo maybe?
Almost.
So Wii was 2006 and sold 101.6 million.
We were all there mostly.
Yeah,
it was a phenomenon. People were getting trampled.
Yeah,
I don't think the injuries were worth it.
A lot of broken TVs.
Oh yeah. I can't count the phenomena that the Wii was in my personal opinion, because the Wii has never been a go-to console for me ever. It is, Smash Bros, Mario Kart. I think that's about it.
So I was really hyped to get a Wii. And obviously, when the Wii came out, at least in North America, it came bundled up with Wii Sports. And that was great. It really demonstrated, hey, this thing is, fucking wacky. We are doing something new. We are doing something that no one else has done before. And that's kind of where it stopped. Companies didn't know how to develop properly for it, or didn't want to do a good user interface for it.
You know what I think a big part of it too is there was so much hype on mass appeal with the Wii that there wasn't enough hyper focused games.
Yeah.
And not a lot of good single player offerings, I find, because it was the party console.
Yeah. I played Splinter Cell Double Agent on it. Co-op and single player, and I had a decent enough time with it when the controls worked. Red Steel I beat. That was a thing that happened.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Such a cool concept, but like
it was
it's
really
just a
cool
rough
concept.
game to
Like,
play.
You see that game and see the console it's coming out with, and this is like the first thing that you've experienced or
It was the
considered
closest
seeing.
thing. Yeah, like that was VR back in the day, right? As close as we were getting to it.
Aside from the other console that we're going to talk about soon.
Oh,
Yeah. um Now, one thing that I'm actually going to give it a bit of a saving grace for was the introduction to the virtual console.
See, the virtual console is really the only reason I care about this thing, because it is the blueprint for one of the reasons why I love the Switch.
Yes. No, absolutely. And like that virtual console had me fall in love with some of the retro titles again, such as Star Tropics. Just to see that actually came out, and they actually had like attention to manuals. And I know I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like Star Tropics has the secret code, and in the manual you had like the sheet of paper that you had to put in water, and it reveals the rest of the letter that's sent by your uncle in game, and that's how it showed the code. They did like a little animation of you dunking the paper in water with the Wiimote and then taking it out to reveal the rest of the code in their little menu, and that was really charming. But like being able to play like Ocarina of Time and a lot of these things, because at this time I didn't have any of my consoles. I had a lot of the games, I just didn't have the console, so I couldn't really do anything with these. They were all stored off in a box where now they're on my shelves. It kind of reinvigorated my love for those retro games and the nostalgia I had for those retro games. So I have a lot of respect for the Wii in that aspect. For its actual library, but it was backwards compatible. But again, if I wasn't fair to the DS for having backwards compatibility, I'm not going to be fair to this for it. So I'm actually going to put the Wii as C, mostly for that virtual console.
I'm also putting it at C. I can't hate on it enough to put it in D. And now this doesn't go to the Wii's benefit, in my opinion, but I will say the Wii era, or at least at its heyday, was probably when Nintendo was at its most fun to follow. Like, we'll go nuts for an upcoming Direct nowadays and whatnot, but it's pretty much, we find out what games are coming out and it's cool. But we were just excited to see what Nintendo was gonna do. And they were doing quirky stuff, like, with the manual for Star Tropics. It's almost like an early internet kind of memory, but at the same time, like that's when you were going to websites like Nintendo.com and just seeing what random little stuff they were going to talk about.
Oh, absolutely.
The Smash Bros hype, like, the Smash reveals for Ultimate were cool, but like, were you there for the days of checking the daily updates at the Smash Dojo? Like, that shit was crazy.
I was there for Everybody Votes channel.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was that too. Like, the Wii Shop music is just like a little dose of like just Nintendo being that quirky, fun corporate entity.
Right? I think the Wii, I almost want to boost this up for it, but it gave Microsoft a run for its money to try and make Kinect work.
Yeah, they failed with that, and then PlayStation's like, here's the Move, we don't care about it either.
Do you guys like balls on the end of your controllers?
Yeah, so the Wii, I don't love it, but I have a lot of respect for it. I'll give it that.
I have respect for it, and I can appreciate it's how it reinvigorated my retro love. So as for its actual like what it is, I think it was an overhyped gimmick that everybody kind of fell for.
So
Wii bowling was probably the best thing.
Wii bowling was a good time. And I like the golf. The golf was a good time. But what about, I feel like we're both kind of in the dark about the next one.
GameCube?
Yeah.
So GameCube 2001, 21.7 million units sold. I actually really liked my GameCube.
See, I never had a GameCube, so I don't really have a great deal of nostalgia with it.
So I did. And this was this is before I really got into PC gaming as much as I did. So with the GameCube, like Luigi Mansion is probably my favorite GameCube game. And that it's weird to say, and it's Luigi's Mansion 1, sorry, is probably still my favorite Luigi's Mansion game. I haven't played 2. I don't. After 3, 3 was fine, but I feel like it lost a lot of its charm that 1 brought. But GameCube, like Metroid Prime, I remember renting that and just being like enamored. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was just enamored with everything. It was so neat to see like a Metroid game in first person, where before all I saw was like Samus from, and I didn't know about Metroid or the series aside from Smash Brothers. Very very much the same as like, who the hell's Ness from Earthbound?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like Super Smash Bros. Melee, the countless hours I had in that, or Luigi's Mansion, I beat that time and time again. Super Mario Sunshine, and I gathered all the Shine sprites. Like I was one of those weird kids that actually had a really good time with Super Mario Sunshine. I loved it. Not so much nowadays because I've kind of fallen out of love with Mario and whatnot. But I actually really enjoyed my time with the GameCube. Animal Crossing, I did play the first one, which came out on GameCube for us. I think it was N64 for Japan. But yeah, no, and had to have the expanded memory card to save everything. That was wacky.
Yeah. Built-in rumble. And the Wavebird.
Never had a Wavebird.
Wavebird,
but that was kind of revolutionary for its time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of nostalgia for the GameCube. It's a little lunchbox. Never played any Zelda games on it, I don't think.
I have, but not on it.
Fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ties I had mostly with Smash Brothers. Like that was the big game that we had. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, and I can't think of them now. It is the one console I do not have the games on my shelf. So I can't just look up and be like, oh yeah, there was that, like dive into the nostalgia I have. But I know I played a lot of Metroid Prime. I know I played a lot of Super Mario Sunshine and Luigi's Mansion, and mostly number one game played was Super Smash Bros. Melee.
See, Melee was like the biggest deal.
Oh yeah.
And though I didn't have a GameCube, the GameCube was always that console that if I went to someone's house and they had a GameCube, I was super stoked to do whatever like game they might have.
Oh, absolutely.
It was so like, foreign and mysterious to me, right? So, but there was a lot of the standard heavy hitters. Like I played a lot of Smash Bros. Oddly enough, didn't really play Mario Kart or any of the GameCube Mario Karts.
Oh, Mario Party and Mario Kart. Those were other ones that I played a lot of.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
But I think for me, the thing that the GameCube is still a very mysterious console to me. And I think that's why I can say that I like it as much as I do, because it has it's like I was saying about the DS, where it was a very experimental library at the time.
Yes.
And if I'm looking at GameCube games to play, I'm looking at some of the more obscure things. Like there's one of the few GameCube games I have played is Mega Man X Command Mission. Shocker, it's a Mega Man game. But it's like a random turn-based RPG that I think was made by the Breath of Fire crew. I think it's on PlayStation as well, but still,
yeah,
gonna play it on a Nintendo console if I can. There's stuff like there's Battalion Wars. There's the Fire Emblem game. The Fire Emblem game on GameCube is really good. And yeah, it's Beautiful Joe. So it's a really bizarre console to me, and that's where I would be most intrigued to try things out for it. I don't really like the controller, though.
No?
No.
I kind of get that, actually.
I think one of the reasons why I don't like it is one of the few GameCube games I have is the Mega Man... I don't think it's called the Legacy Collection, but there is it's the Anniversary Collection. And it has Mega Man 1 to 8 on it, I believe. And that was actually how I first played through Mega Man 8.
Okay.
Oh, dear God. Oh, jeez. That controller is not meant for SNES-style platforms.
No.
I know Mega Man 8 was on the PlayStation, but the PlayStation's just a Super Nintendo. So, I did it. It sucked. The D-pad on the GameCube might as well not even be there.
So yeah,
So
the D-pad on that GameCube controller, if you tried to do anything like that required the D-pad, like a Mega Man game, where do
you
that on
weren't.
PlayStation because that thing is a D-pad.
Um,
Doing it on the GameCube, no, that thing would be abysmal.
but yeah, it's got a library that I am super intrigued by, and like though do have that modded GameCube, it's just one of those things that it's the emulation problem. I have a hard time actually getting around to doing it, but there's stuff like Custom Robo's one I've always wanted to check out. There's always Remake, which if I'm gonna get into Resident Evil, that'd be a great place to start.
You know what is a very weird time for me, game genre wise, was the PlayStation and GameCube. Two games, but we're talking about GameCube, so I'll talk about GameCube. Soul Calibur 2.
Ooh, I did
With
play
Zelda,
a lot of Soul Calibur 2.
Oh god, I did the thing with Link.
Yeah.
With Zelda representation.
Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube was a time. Oh,
yes.
And Link was so broken. You just give him the hammer and uppercut things out of the ring. Oh, yeah.
The other one I was going to
right
refer to from PlayStation is Bloody Roar.
Ooh, I did play a fair bit of Bloody Roar back in the day, too.
But like, knowing my genre, I stay far away from fighting games. I played a lot of Soul Calibur 2.
Soul Calibur 2 is what Soul Calibur is a series I wish was still kind of relevant. They kind of burned themselves out.
Yeah.
It is a fun fighting. So I'm gonna say B. I feel comfortable with B. I don't love it. I don't really got a lot negative to say to it, and the library intrigues the shit out of me. So
yeah, so there's still one game that I really want to play for the GameCube, and I keep saying I'm going to do it every October, and I never do. But that's Eternal Darkness.
Oh yeah,
I want to check that out. I've heard so many good things, and even though that some of the twists are not going to hit nearly as hard, just because like it's very different compared to when it came out. I'm throwing in B.
Yeah,
and
I'm comfortable with B.
A lot of that is because I enjoy my time. I don't do a whole lot of party games anymore. So it kind of loses a bit of value there. It's single player. I didn't do a whole lot. I mean, Metroid Prime I now have on Switch. Yeah, I'm gonna say B.
Yep.
So
yep, I'm good with that.
But Luigi's Mansion 1 is still the best one. I don't care.
See, I'm eagerly. I know my next GameCube game that I'll be playing is going to be Thousand Year Door, and I am looking forward to that.
Oh yeah, that was the thing. That's also on Switch. Yeah. Switch now.
Yeah. So
see, you need to play Luigi's Mansion 1.
One day I'll do a Luigi.
Not 2 or 3, just 1.
Yeah. So this one's a pretty high ranker for me. I think it's safe to say.
Which one is that?
That would be my beloved Game Boy Advance.
Ah, yes. So 2001, 81.5 million units sold.
I can't, in all good conscience, put it in S because of the fact that, I think the DS did some things better. It had more buttons. The buttons helped. But the Game Boy Advance library has some of my absolute favorite games of all time. Now, a lot of them are playable in other means, but the ones that aren't, that are trapped there, I can bring it up every time I get a chance to play some Robopon 2.
Yep.
And I think most of my fondness comes from it is the fact that it's just an extension to the Super Nintendo library in my mind.
Oh, very much so. It was the portable SNES.
Yeah, and that's enough to fall in love with it. Now, where I can safely admit it loses a lot of points is that, surprisingly, Nintendo's offerings are super light on this. Nintendo was like kind of doing a lot of the port thing for the Game Boy Advance.
Yes.
Which is great, because, like we played a lot of Yoshi's Island on it and whatnot, but there wasn't a lot of like super original titles coming from them. A lot of remakes of classic games and stuff like that.
Okay, so, but in the same argument, like we were talking about the Switch, and it's like, yeah, Nintendo has a good amount of titles and whatnot, but those aren't why the Switch is so high in our rankings.
No, I just can't praise it as much as the Switch because there's no way the Game Boy Advance library can compete with it, and a lot of it, if you're looking beyond some of the quality gems, is trash. This was at the peak of licensed game shit.
Yeah.
So, but some of that licensed game shit is, it's like a guilty pleasure meal sometimes. If they all have their charm.
Says the man who owns Rustler.
Yeah, I haven't beat it yet though. I haven't gotten so far as to beat it, but I do own Rustler. Now the Game Boy Advance is just the best, and if you're looking at it, also other iterations, I know the SP is the most fondly looked upon. I've said it several times before. My hands are too big for it now. I don't like when my thumbs touch, but the original Game Boy Advance has one of the most comfortable handheld form factors of anything.
So, I'm actually going to be tossing in A tier.
That's where I'm putting it.
I love the library. I have very fond memories of road trips with this thing. They were stupid as shit for not putting a backlight on it.
No.
And I'm not going to say, okay, well, the SP had a backlight. Yes, it did, but again, I'd rather use Joy-Cons.
Yep.
Then hang on to that.
Yep.
So now there is like hardware mods that you can do to get backlight, but we're talking stock in this aspect. But like this is where I first learned the joys of Castlevania with Castlevania. Oh God, what's it called?
Aria of Sorrow?
No, the one that Circle of the Moon. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to say Symphony of the Night. No, that's wrong. Yeah, Circle of the Moon. Like I played that a lot, and I loved Castlevania games because of it. And then went into Aria of Sorrow. Loved the living shit out of those two games. The amount of Mario Golf I've played on this thing. The fact it definitely helps that it was backwards compatible. Yeah, no, it's I have a lot of nostalgia for this. For the it's just handy to hold. It would be S tier if it had a backlight.
I think the thing that's keeping it from S tier, if we're looking at its stock, because I would put my modded Game Boy Advance at S tier. That thing's beautiful.
Oh, absolutely.
But its original library is some of the coolest shit ever. You've got the Metroidvania, Castlevanias. You've got Metroid games, which are just fantastic.
Yep.
A big thing for me for this handheld was RPGs. It came out with some of the best RPGs. And they were in that perfect length, too. Like, they were still around, like, the 25 to 30 hour mark, right? So they weren't getting too obnoxious. Oh, God, just the amount of genres. This was also... I kind of spoke to its detriment before, but some really cool remakes came out around this time. Like, there was a remake of Tales of Phantasia, which was a Super Nintendo game we never got. So they did a full remake for the Game Boy Advance. It's great. So, would be S tier, but... you know what? Screw it. This going an S.
I'm going to keep it an A, even though that I had, like, my favorite at the time Super Nintendo game, and that was Link to the Past.
No, it's getting crowded up there. Down you go, back to A. But that's a strong A.
Yeah, it is a strong A.
Yeah.
Actually, another thing that kind of has a fault on it is the flimsy backplate for the batteries.
Yeah.
That thing broke by just looking at it sometimes.
Did have a killer battery life, though.
It did. So, yeah. No, that is a strong A. That is a good solid A start to my A tiers.
Is N64 next? I think it's next.
Is it next, or is that little child locked in the basement next?
Not yet. Soon. Not yet.
That is not even on my list, actually. Okay, so N64. 1996, 32.9 million units sold. This one is... it's one I've been thinking about, because it's like... It's fine. At the same time, I don't like it.
So my ranking of the N64 just may shock you, but I'm putting it in A.
Yeah?
Yeah, and the reason why the N64 is nostalgia bait. It is so hard with its nostalgia bait. Like, but But I think the reason why I can still hold the N64 in such high regard, I'll admit, a lot of its games are a pain in the ass to go back to and play now.
Yeah.
That controller is not the greatest thing in the world, and yet the only controller you can use for its games. Nothing else feels good. But I think what does it for me is the fact that I can still actively get joy out of multiplayer with this console.
Yeah.
I will go out of my way for multiplayer on an actual N64 when the opportunity is presented. And it also gets a little bit of that benefit of, I think, pretty fondly of its library. Its library is very small, but some of the games that were on it were so good. Like, Mario Party's still so good.
And see, this is where I'm having a hard time.
Not so much.
Because I played a lot of N64. It has some killer games on it, and I sunk a lot of time into them. Case in point, Donkey Kong 64. The fact that I have 100% of that game, or whatever it is, 101, speaks volumes to how much time I actually had as a kid. But like Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, the amounts of GoldenEye and Perfect Dark I played is stupid. Donkey Kong 64, Super Mario 64. A lot of time spent in that. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. It had some solid games. I want to put it in A tier, but it might be B.
But it hurts. It hurts to touch.
It does, because I've tried going back to Ocarina of Time, and I always have I struggle with it. Oh, Paper Mario, the original Paper Mario. I like that. I beat that recently. I have yet to beat Thousand Year Door. I really should, because that's apparently the better one.
You know what?
Star Fox 64. The amount I've played that is just incredible.
I think the fact that I can look back on games that I know aren't good fondly, like it's I'm so stupid for it, but I like Quest 64. It's not a good game, but goddamn, does it ever just make something inside me very happy.
So there's a meme account that actually follows us on Twitter. It's the Daily Quest 64 guy.
That's amazing. That is fantastic.
I haven't played Quest 64. I've wanted to, and there's a few N64 games I do want to check out. Space Station Silicon Valley. That was another game that I beat, and that going back to that is just atrocious to play and very, very difficult. But
I haven't played that, but I really want to. There's the underrated gem Mischief Makers, which honestly, like, that could get a port to anything and probably have its controls configured. It'd be fine. But and then like there's something about the trash that I really like. Like there's a racing game on. I think it came out on pretty much everything, but it's called Revolt, and it's just you're just racing RC cars, and it's all like realistic tiny environments. Fuck, how did I not mention this? Toy Story 2's on it. It's great. It's like almost better than Mario 64. Banjo-Kazooie.
Banjo-Tooie. Can't say much about Tooie, but Banjo-Kazooie is fantastic.
Yeah. It's like I said, the console is hard nostalgia bait, but then I think about playing games that, again, aren't good, but like Toy Soldiers, great time. Yeah, and its multiplayer is, in my mind, unmatched.
It was the sleepover console.
God, was it ever. And yeah, its single player offerings, not too crazy, but they pique my curiosity. Like, I've never played the Castlevania games on them. I've heard they're not great, but I want to.
I have one.
Oh, weird. Oh yeah, that's right. You just have straight up Castlevania, don't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, for me it's an A. I can look at it very, very happily. So
I'm gonna put it as B. I have a lot of nostalgia for this. Don't get me wrong, and I can think back fondly on it, but that's exactly where I think most of these experiences need to stay, is in the past. GameCube I can go back to and still play, no problem. Super Nintendo and NES I can go back to, no problem. N64, it really takes its toll to go back to. So I'm going to have it as B, and if I need to convince anyone any further that B is a great tier, Uh, I'm pretty sure I have scarring on my palms from Mario Party.
Yeah, that's understandable.
So
The game drew blood.
it
I
did.
can understand that.
Yeah, it would be either an A minus or a B plus. We don't have those denominations, so I'm just gonna stick in B. I can look back on it fondly. I mean, it's right beside GameCube for me. I just said that GameCube. I could go. I think the N64 library is. I had a lot more fun with, but I have a really hard time going back to it.
You ready for a real quick and easy one?
Sure.
This is D tier, Virtual Boy. Down you get.
S tier. Made me see things.
You have no validation. So, have you ever used a Virtual Boy?
Yes.
They hurt.
Yes, they do.
They are the most uncomfortable gaming experience you'll ever have.
Yeah, I'm going to put in a D tier. Only game I've played on it was the Wario game.
Yeah, I've also played the Wario game. The Wario game is good.
Yeah. The only place I played it at was when we had a Kmart. And it was on display. That was the only place. And it was stand up, play it.
No, I had a friend of mine. He had a Virtual Boy, and yeah, he had Wario Land, and I don't even know what else. He might have only had Wario Land, but either way, spent some time with it. But it's just so uncomfortable, especially you have to adjust the focus on it and stuff.
Would be S till it gave me a headache. Now it's D.
That's like 12 games, if that. Like, oof.
I think 16.
This game hurt. This console just
it's
didn't
funny
stand a chance
because it doesn't even show up in this list of tops or console sales that I have here.
Weird.
And this has the fucking N-Gage.
Yeah, no, there's no notable sales for the
no
for the Virtual Boy. It goes in D for 2 D-pads.
Yeah.
Why? But now onto a much easier one. The Game Boy Color.
Game Boy Color. God.
This one's weird because it's not really doing a lot more than the Game Boy, but at the same time doing a lot more than the Game Boy.
I mean, nowadays it's next to nothing, but being able to play some of your Game Boy games in color was just a novel idea at the time. It was like when they first brought color TVs just for us as kids. It was.
So I think it's more comfortable than the original Game Boy.
It is because it's slimmer too, right? So it's more in line with like almost pocket, just with roundedness, easier ergonomics on it.
That's just it. It's kind of rounded to the back for a better form factor with your hands. The buttons feel a little bit nicer. It still doesn't have a backlight, but the light was a little bit easier, or it was easier to see the screen. You no longer had that the dimness slider that the original Game Boy had.
Yeah, with the for contrast.
If we're just looking at the Game Boy Color standalone library, it's okay. It's no Game Boy library, but it's also better than the Game Boy library. It's weird.
There's a few things that it's like
not a lot of exclusives that come to mind, right? Beyond like Link's Awakening DX, which is just an improved Game Boy game.
Well, the DX version was a black cartridge.
Yes. Yeah, and then you've got stuff like Wario Land, like all those are black cartridges. If we're looking like truly original, you've got
Pokemon Gold and Silver.
No, those were technically Game Boy games.
Crystal.
Crystal is exclusive,
right?
Yeah, but the Game Boy Color did a couple neat things. You had like stuff like Kirby Tilt and Tumble and like Pokemon Pinball.
Right.
That's when we started to get like some of those real gimmicky things.
Okay, so my time with Kirby Tilt and Tumble and Pokemon Pinball, those were probably my most played games. Mostly Tilt and Tumble on my Game Boy Color.
I'm trying to think of what I played a lot on the Game Boy Color. I know I played like a lot of the Zelda Ages and Seasons games.
Oh yeah, played a lot of those too.
But when I think about like, original Game Boy Color titles, like I don't have a lot of nostalgia for them. I have a handful now, and they're fun. Um, but nothing like super jumps out at me. Most of them are black cards, which, they're transferable,
Yeah.
right? So I can't really give it points that the original Game Boy is not getting. So it's a good thing, but I don't think it's any more than that. So for me, the color is going to sit firmly at B.
That's where it's going for me.
It belongs there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't say much because, yeah. So Game Boy Color came out in 98.
Okay, so technically after the Virtual Boy, but we're done talking about that one.
Yeah, because I don't know when that came out.
No. I think it was like 95 or something like that. It was really weird. But see, the thing about the Virtual Boy, it was like a 32-bit console. So technically, almost as powerful as the Game Boy Advance. It just sucks.
I think the Virtual Boy was 64, was it not?
Maybe, but that doesn't seem right. Just because they were so proud of the 64 being 64.
Yeah. Oh no, it was 32-bit. My bad.
Yeah, but still.
Yeah.
More powerful than you'd think for something that's just red.
So next up, I guess since we talked about the Game Boy Color, let's go Game Boy.
Let's just jump right into the Game Boy.
So my stats for this, Game Boy came out in 1989. The stats
like
I have
80 million or something.
So this list has Game Boy Color and Game Boy mixed together. So and that's sitting at 118.7 million.
That's a lot of Game Boys.
Yes. So Game Boy, this would probably be higher than the Color, but I'm actually going to be putting it in C tier.
See, yeah, that's where I'm also really torn.
The Color, and I know I've said okay, no, is it really backwards compatible? Because they were kind of compatible with each other ish. Like I could play my Game Boy games on Game Boy Color, and then some, like they were coming out with the black cartridge games, which worked on either or. So it is technically it's same, just they had special exclusives for the Color.
It's kind of like the DSi or the new 3DS, just obviously standing out a little bit more as its own because it did have a bit more of a prominent library, right?
Yes, and I think that's the biggest thing. Like Game Boy before the Game Boy Color, fantastic. When I got my Game Boy Color, I stuck with the Game Boy Color. I did not go back to the gray brick.
No, you had no reason to. And I think another thing too is when you look at a Game Boy game versus a Game Boy Color game, they do actually seem like different entities as opposed to going from a DS to a DSi or a new 3DS exclusive game. It's just a game I can't play on the other one, right?
Yeah.
So I think that would make the Game Boy Color stand alone. If we are going to look at the fact of the backwards compatibility, then yes, the Game Boy is lower than the Game Boy Color. I'm going to look at the Game Boy as the entity that it was, and it's also going into B. It's going to sit right beside the Game Boy Color, because
you know what?
I'm not one to mix the two.
That is kind of fair, because they are kind of hand in hand. Game Boy did have the Game Boy Pocket and Game Boy Light.
Well, and the Color wouldn't be where it is without the original Game Boy, so that's why it's kind of...
Well, the Switch wouldn't be where it is without anything else.
Yeah, and I'll give it the point that that's why it's where it is. So, they belong in tandem.
Yeah.
And
they kind of go
Game Boy games, for me, they're still fun to go back to. So I'm not going to rank it lower than I would something that I have a hard time going back to.
That's fair. Yeah.
So,
you know what? I'm going to go B as well.
For Game Boy.
For boy, that's a game.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we do this other silly one before we go into the two? Assuming these are going to be juggernauts.
The Game & Watch?
Yeah.
All right. I'll make this quick and simple with the Game & Watch. It's going in C.
Yeah.
And the reason it's going in C and not D is because it doesn't do anything to harm me or offend me in any way. The DSi offends me.
I can respect it for what it is.
It's the only thing for me with the Game & Watch is I have no desire 2, and I can say that because the Game & Watch I have is better than a Game & Watch.
Yes.
It's a toy. That's the best way to put it. It's a toy.
Which makes sense given its time.
But
I would place it higher than
cool.
Tiger Electronics.
Oh god, yeah. No, they're neat. They are neat, and that alone is enough for me to respect it. Especially, the many different iterations. There's there's boxing, and I think hockey was another one that had the multiple components for multiplayer. The DS basically was designed after one.
Yeah.
So it's cute. It can go in C for cute. That's where I'm landing.
Yep. No, that's fair. All right. So we got 2 more left.
Yep.
Next one came out in 1990. 49.1 million sold. And that is the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or Super Famicom.
Okay. So I made another column above S, and I am putting it there. It's no competition in my mind. The Super Nintendo is a triple S console. There is no debate on that whatsoever. Well, actually there is, but...
So, the Super Nintendo is, obviously both nostalgia for both of us. They have a lot of great games. This is the time that I could play a trash game like the Page Master and still have a lot of fun.
That's the N64 syndrome that I had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's one thing I've said, the Super Nintendo was, sure, things look nicer nowadays, that go into the retro aesthetics, the pixel art and whatnot. But for a console to last as long as it did, just using pixels, it was kind of the golden era of pixel art until we started getting indies.
Pixel art creativity, RPGs was this nice newfound territory.
Super Mario RPG. The fact that they did that, the Mode 7, that just blew everyone's mind at the time. It has Chrono Trigger.
It has Chrono Trigger. What more do you need? That's why the DS went in S tier. How did I know? So
Final Fantasy 6. Earthbound.
Final Fantasy 6. Yeah. Earthbound.
Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3. They're all good. Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island. Yoshi's Island was difficult to 100%, but these were all games that I used to complete, erase my file, and then complete again. And they are all fairly easy to go back to.
Well, and that's actually why I can't not rank this as this is definitively my favorite console ever.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that not only can I easily go back to a lot of these games, I will go out of my way to go back to a lot of these games.
I'm playing one right now, Demon's Crest on Switch Online.
Yeah, just finished Earthbound. Demon's Crest was a game that, how I discovered it was something I never played, but it's a Super Nintendo game that intrigued me. So it pulled me right in.
It was only in Japan, but Seiken Densetsu 3 or the original Trials of Mana.
Yeah, that's my favorite game of all time. Always will be.
Yeah.
So it's Link to the Past.
Link to the Past.
Super Metroid.
That is still my favorite Zelda game.
Yeah, so there's no competition. I'm not exactly in a majority here, but I personally think the Super Nintendo controller is one of the most comfortable things in the world. I will take any opportunity I can to use it. God, it's just, and even discovering new games for it is still a blast. Like you said, even if they're trashed, I can think of at least 3 games off the top of my head. There's Harley's Humongous Adventure, Jelly Boy, or not Jelly Boy, Super Ball, fucking Crash Test Dummies. These games are stupid, but they're still fun.
Yeah.
Licensed games were good. Shit like Aladdin.
Spot.
Yeah.
This does get double S. You know why? Because it has Bubsy.
And Bubsy too.
I don't care what anyone says. I used to have fun with Bubsy. Nowadays, I can't stand it, but It's
It had its charm.
it did, and it's funny because I was at a thrift store a couple days ago, and I saw Bubsy 1 and 2 there, and I was so tempted to pick it up because they're like $12 a piece. It's like, oh, just to throw it in the collection, that would just be great.
As much as I hated it, I still played a shit ton of Death Valley Rally.
Yep.
Turtles in Time's one of the greatest beat 'em ups ever. Still a good time to go back to.
Adventure Island. Still good.
I never did Adventure Island, yeah. And then, if you want to talk experimental, this was where the experimentation started. So,
and let's not forget about something that the GameCube had as well, which we didn't bring up, but the Super Game Boy.
Yep, Super Game Boy. It had its nice little bit of adaptability.
Yep.
God,
it was
Super Nintendo just wins.
It does. SimCity.
Yeah.
It actually has. Okay, so I don't know if I've actually played the SimCity for Super Nintendo, but the same version is for DOS on PC, and to this day, it is still my favorite version of SimCity.
And even going beyond just playing the games, Super Nintendo is why I love video game music as much as I do.
Pac-Man 2, The New Adventure.
Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures, everybody. Want to feel stressed out? That game will do it. Oh, yeah. No further comments.
Yeah.
Super Nintendo
S-tier.
is
I think
the
everyone
top
saw
of
that
the
coming.
tier. Yeah. Now, what about the father of it all? Not you, Game & Watch. We did you.
So the NES, the family computer,
Yeah.
the Nintendo Entertainment System, came out in 1983, sold 61.9 million. So about 11 million more than the Super Nintendo. And it was
Finally at the start here at the end.
Yep.
I have mixed feelings. I have strong feelings, but I have mixed feelings.
This was the console that made me a gamer. And this is also the console that has a lot of stupid shit on it. But it also has a lot of neat shit. To this day, I'm still figuring out.
See, I still like going back and playing NES
Yes.
games, but I am not blind to the fact that you have to want to. They are not easy to just get into these days, you know.
Depending on what it is.
Well, that's just it, right? You know, obviously there are some that have aged like fine wine. You know, Super Mario Bros. 1 to 3 are always going to feel pretty good. I can even say 1 feels a little dated, but it doesn't mean I don't have fun playing it. You know, to convince anyone else to play any of the original Mega Man games, pretty tricky. I'm still going to love playing them, right?
Yeah.
So it does have a ton of games like that, but it also has, you know, it's pretty hard to... I love Balloon Fight, but try showing that off, being like, that's impressive, isn't it?
But it just needs to be fun. And this is where a lot of creative liberties were taken with games, so they would be fun.
Console does excel at fun. I will give you that.
I'm going to be putting in S tier, because the fact that I'm still finding games, like I do with the Super Nintendo as well, but like I'm still finding NES games. I don't have a hard time going back to it. All honesty, I have a whole hard time not going back to it.
That's some pretty solid praise for the NES.
And granted, the two games, as I've mentioned so many times now, the Star Tropics 2. But like, just at the start of the whole pandemic, I dove into the original Metroid, and I beat it 3 times now. The first time with save states, second time, no, and third time, no. I just did it straight off and just beat my times. I went back a couple years back and did Zelda 2, and had a really good time for it. I gained a lot of respect for that game. I still should beat Zelda 1. I haven't. I've started so many times.
1.
I've got a good way through the original Ninja Turtles. Like, I've got past the dam level with all the mines in the water.
Did you not play through the NES version of Final Fantasy 1 as well?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And the Pixel Remaster.
Yeah. See,
I got a good way. I completed one run. I did not do the second run of Ghosts and Goblins. So I have that under my belt too, without save states. Kirby's
That's a rough
Adventure, which was spectacular at the time. I have a French version on my shelf for some reason.
yeah.
I
Castlevania 1, 2, and
1,
3.
2, and 3. I just went back recently and played through all three of those.
Yep.
And I mean, 2 is a bit of a like. He's the kid you don't talk about in the attic or basement, but it's not as bad as everyone claims.
There were some good ideas there.
It had a lot of potential. There was some execution that was done poorly, but it was still fun to do. And like these are games that I went back and purposely went back to. I mean, Mega Man 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6 I've gone back to. I own 1, 2, 3, 4 on my shelf now. I have a copy of Highlight, just kicks.
So,
I've gone back and played Crystallis. I've gone back and played Fox Xanadu.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of NES games that within the past couple of years I've gained a lot of respect for that I never played back in the day. But it's just one of those things. It's just fun. I went out of my way to get a pre-order a mod for my NES so it would work better. Akin to the blinking light win, but it was the Nintendo drawer, so I can just shove games in now. It doesn't have any of that blinking light shit. It just works. It's a better cartridge connectors. Like, I don't know, man. NES is going to be S tier for me.
See, I'm not quite as high of praise. You know, it's funny, when we first went into this, I was originally thinking I was going to put it in B tier, but kind of looking at what I've got here, I think for me, it's going to slot nicely in A tier. And I think that just goes to show that, like, I don't think it's the most comfortable thing to play. I'm not a big fan of the NES controller. Like, if I'm going to play something on the Switch Online, I'll probably just use the Super Nintendo controller. Yep. But at the same time, its games are still fun. Now, I don't really complete a lot of NES games these days, but I'm always down to try an NES
right?
game.
It's not like you try and avoid them at all costs, like a Sega.
No, every time they put something new on, like, what is it? I know it's not even good, but when it went on the Switch Online service, I played The Immortal for a bit.
Yep.
Just because I wanted to see what it was about. You know, and sometimes when I do, I stumble upon stuff like I really like. Like, it wasn't until we did the Black Box episode that I found out, like, Wrecking Crew was really fun.
Yeah, Wrecking Crew's great.
Most recently, I would say, like, the last thing I was playing on the Switch Online service was Tetris. Hilarious, too, how much I talk shit about Tetris, because I do not like it. But damn, am I ever a sucker for that NES remix of the fucking Nutcracker theme.
Right.
And the most recent, like, lengthy game that I played for it was River City Ransom, like the original version. It was great. Like, fantastic game, and still holds up pretty well. But I think the reason why I can't put it in S is just from the fact that, like, if it weren't for my fondness for these things, I would have a hard time seeing the appeal. And that's where I can see, you know, the sad truth is I find a lot of people don't really care about the NES that much these days.
No, they don't. And it's one of those things that I'd love to collect more for, but a lot of them are... I'm not paying a stupid amount for some games. And it's as simple as that. I'm very firm that if I cannot pay the developers or anything, then I'm not going to spend a whole lot of money on it to get in my collection.
Yeah, I think the only thing that, like, the last game that I bought for my collection that was for NES was just Mega Man 1, and, you know, obvious reason. Now I have all the NES Mega Mans. So, but I'm not going out of my way to get NES cartridges to play. I will just play NES games when I can, how I can, right?
Right.
Switch Online, a couple of those random things they put on the Evercade for whatever reason. Fucking emulate, like, I'll find ways. But, yeah. So we got our tier list. We're satisfied with what we got.
I'm pretty satisfied. What is yours?
Mine hilariously makes an arch. So It goes at the top in my triple S category. We have the Super Nintendo, the untouchable, and then in S we have the Switch and the original DS, and then we have in A the Game Boy Advance, N64, NES. B has a nice comfortable home for the 3DS, the GameCube, the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, and then C we start getting a little rocky with the Wii and the Wii U. And then the Game & Watch is just there because like, I don't want to put it in D. And then lastly, at the bottom of the pile, we've got the DSi. So why are you here? And then the Virtual Boy. Why won't you leave?
So for me, S tier, I got the Nintendo Switch, the Super Nintendo, and the NES. The A tier, I have the Game Boy Advance. B tier, I got the 3DS, the GameCube, N64, Game Boy, and Game Boy Color. C tier, I have the Nintendo Wii and the Game & Watch. And D, I have the Wii U, the DSi, the Nintendo DS, and the Virtual Boy.
A lot more contention there. Yeah. I like mine. Mine makes a very satisfying pattern to look at.
Mine looks like someone's rocking out, but they forgot it's not the middle finger, it's the index finger.
And like I think I can look at mine and go, that feels right. I don't feel like changing anything. I think if there's any placements that I'm like a little wishy-washy about, it'd be like maybe the 3DS and the N64, but even still, I think I'm comfortable with where they are.
I think the only thing I'd be a little wishy-washy on is moving GameCube and N64 to A tier, given how everything kind of turned out.
Looking top to bottom, I do feel like this fits within the level of desirability of enjoying these things.
Yeah. The only difference for me is I might be more inclined to go back to a GameCube or N64 before a Game Boy Advance. But I have a lot of enjoyment out of the titles that I played for Game Boy Advance.
I might play some Game Boy Advance after this. I don't even know yet. I'm kind of in limbo right now.
Perfect. All right. Anything else that you have?
No. I think we're good to shill our socials and then wrap her up. Which is almost 2-hour episode.
Yeah,
so.
this was meant to be not a one-off, but like just kind of a nice, easy talk, and this turned out longer than expected. So again, I say this a lot, but hope it didn't suck. Hope you guys were entertained enough. Tyler, you have fun?
I always have fun with this kind of stuff. Talking Nintendo's always a good time.
Beauty. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you've made it this far, tell your friends, tell your family, tell people you hate, tell people you love. Go find us, Optional Boss Podcast, on your favorite podcasting services, or you can find us on Blue Sky, which is where we are more or less nowadays because Twitter has gone to. Yeah.
Also YouTube, we're there.
YouTube.
I think you can leave comments on Spotify as well. So if so, leave us a comment.
So just search Optional Boss Podcast on Blue Sky. We're Optional Boss PC, and same with Instagram. We don't do a whole lot of Instagram. And yeah, but we'll post these tier lists up, and that is all from us. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.